The 15th of December, 1859. Fayetteville, North Carolina. While most Americans debated slavery in parlors and political halls, one woman named Judith was preparing the deadliest dinner party in Southern history. Stirring a cast-iron pot that would become the graveyard of 18 plantation masters. In an era when resistance meant certain death, she transformed her kitchen into a courtroom and served justice on silver platters, watching as her oppressors collapsed one by one at their own feast. But what drives a person so far past their breaking point that they're willing to sacrifice everything, including their own life, to balance the scales of justice? The night that would shatter a plantation's reign of terror begins in the kitchen quarters, where Judith's calloused hands grip a cast-iron pot, the very vessel that will deliver justice to 18 souls. Steam rises from the cauldron like prayers ascending to a God who seems to have forgotten her people. But tonight, Judith no longer waits for divine intervention. Tonight, she becomes both judge and executioner in her own right. She moves through the shadows of the Whitmore plantation like a ghost haunting her own life, silent, deliberate, unseen, but never unfelt. 28 years of bondage have carved deep lines into her face, each wrinkle a testament to unspeakable cruelties she has borne. Her back bears the crosshatch scars of countless lashings, raised flesh that tells stories no human should endure. The iron shackles that once bound her ankles have worn permanent grooves into her skin, reminders etched in flesh that the world has marked her as property and forgotten she was born with a soul. The plantation house itself gleams with ill-gotten wealth, a grotesque monument to suffering. Crystal chandeliers scatter prismatic light across polished mahogany tables where Master Edmund Whitmore presides, his massive frame draped in silk and satisfaction. His sons, Thomas and Benjamin, orbit his cruelty, eager apprentices in barbarity. Their laughter carries through the grand halls like a whip cracking, echoing against walls built from her people's blood, sweat, and tears. They dine on delicacies prepared by hands whipped raw, sleep soundly in feather beds stuffed with down, plucked from geese her people raised, dream peacefully while nightmares plague those forced to serve them. Judith feels the contrast with every breath she takes, their silk against her burlap, their silver goblets against her wooden bowl, their freedom to move through sunlit rooms while she remains chained to shadows. Even the scents betray the division, the lavender soap that clings to their skin, mingling with the rank odor of damp earth, sweat, and fear that permeates the slave quarters. She tends their fires while her own people shiver. She seasons their meat while her children starve. The kitchen is her sanctuary and her prison, a place where she transforms base ingredients into sustenance for the very people who despise her existence. Each motion, each cut, each stir of the spoon has become mechanical after years of repetition. Yet tonight, something stirs beneath the monotony of service, something that has been growing like poison ivy deep within her chest. Her dark eyes, once dulled by exhaustion, now glimmer with a secret fire, carrying depths even she had not dared to acknowledge. Judith's hands work the pot with outward precision, but her thoughts drift far from recipes and portions. She imagines the taste of freedom, the feel of chains falling away, the sound of silence after centuries of screams. Every rising wisp of steam is no longer just food, it is a signal, an omen, a promise. The same pot that fed her oppressors for decades will soon become the altar of their reckoning. And for the first time in 28 years, Judith allows herself to believe that the night does not belong to them, it belongs to her. The transformation begins on a frost-bitten morning, the kind where the air feels sharp enough to cut through bone. Judith stands helpless as they drag away Samuel, her eldest boy, to the auction block. His screams pierce the winter air like a blade splitting her in two. The whip falls across his small shoulders, each crack louder than the last, tearing not only at his skin but at something deep and irrevocable within her. His hand, tiny, trembling, desperate, reaches toward her even as the wagon carries him away into the mist, into a future of chains she cannot protect him from. Something shatters inside her. It is not sudden but seismic, a collapse of everything that once tethered her to endurance. For years, she endured indignities with clenched teeth, convincing herself that survival meant patience, silence, and faith in a mercy that never came. But in that moment, watching Samuel disappear, Judith realizes mercy does not exist here. In its place, something far more dangerous is born. Master Edmund Whitmore watches the scene with grotesque delight, his belly shaking as he laughs at the boy's terror. This mountain of a man, who brands human flesh as casually as one marks cattle, finds joy in a mother's devastation. Thomas Whitmore, the eldest son, mirrors his father's cruelty but cloaks it in youth's arrogance, inventing torments with an artist's flourish. Benjamin Whitmore, perhaps the most insidious, hides his malice behind a veneer of charm, a gentleman's smile masking his calculating, surgical evil. The slave's whisper of Judith's change, before she herself fully recognizes it. She becomes sharper, more deliberate, moving with a quiet intensity that unsettles even her fellow servants. Her eyes no longer avoid contact. Instead, they cut like sharpened blades through the gloom, seeing possibilities where before she saw only despair. In the woods, she begins collecting herbs, ostensibly for seasoning or remedies, harmless to any observer. But foxglove, nightshade, and hemlock are not the tools of a cook. They are the ingredients of judgment. Her pot, once an instrument of sustenance, evolves into her weapon. Every stir, every measured pour of liquid becomes ritual, a sacred act of preparation. She works by moonlight, the kitchen transformed into her war room. Steam curls upward like incense in a church, except here, the prayers are not for salvation but for vengeance. Each herb she grinds into powder carries the weight of Samuel's cries. Each drop she adds to the simmering cauldron carries the memory of her people's suffering. The signs accumulate like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Master Whitmore, blinded by arrogance, announces a grand feast to celebrate a bountiful harvest. 18 guests invited to gorge themselves on the fruits of stolen labor. For him, it is tradition. For Judith, it is opportunity. As she prepares, her hands remain steady, her face unreadable, but within her chest burns a steady fire, an ember fanned into a blaze by grief, rage, and something new, resolve. 28 years of chains have forged her into something unbreakable. And as the feast approaches, Judith knows this will not be another night of servitude. This will be the night the world remembers her name. The kitchen transforms into her temple of retribution, as midnight approaches like a dark angel bearing witness to her purpose. Candlelight flickers across weathered hands that have known only labor and pain, hands now elevated to instruments of divine justice. She works in absolute silence, broken only by the gentle grinding of mortar against pestle and the soft whisper of deadly herbs surrendering their secrets. Foxglove petals crumble between her fingers like dried blood, releasing their cardiac poison with the promise of stilled hearts. Nightshade berries burst against her palm, their dark juice staining her skin with the color of vengeance. Hemlock roots yield their paralytic essence under her knife, each slice deliberate as a surgeon's cut, each motion precise, as though guided by something greater than herself. Her inner voice becomes a litany of remembrance and resolve. This measure for Samuel's tears. This portion for Mary's screams when they sold her south. This deadly gift for every lash that kissed my spine. The cast iron pot becomes her altar, steam rising from its depths like souls ascending toward final judgment. Butter churned from cream becomes the vehicle for Foxglove's kiss. Salt ground from rock carries Hemlock's paralysis. Sugar refined from cane conceals Nightshade's bitter promise. Simple staples of survival are transfigured into weapons of reckoning. The feast takes shape under her hands like a masterwork of culinary artistry cloaked in lethal intent. Golden fowl emerge from the oven, their skin blistered and crackling with promised flavor, while foxglove seeps invisibly through their flesh. Root vegetables glisten with oils infused with herbs, every bite hiding hemlock's slow embrace. Wine breathes in crystal decanters, its deep burgundy masking the darker hue of crushed nightshade. Judith arranges everything with maternal care, as though preparing her children's final supper, except tonight, her children are not the ones who will eat. The dining room swells with boisterous celebration as the plantation elite gather, flushed with greed and wine. Crystal chandeliers blaze, scattering fractured light across mahogany tables, while silver gleams like cold stars. Their voices rise in crude jokes about the bodies they own, their laughter loud enough to drown out the cries of those still shackled in the quarters outside. They toast to prophets carved from suffering, feasting like Roman emperors, gorging themselves before ruin. Judith moves between kitchen and hall like a shadow, silent, invisible, death's servant, cloaked in servitude. She watches as Master Edmund Whitmore attacks the golden fowl with savage appetite, grease slicked across his chin. His massive hands rip flesh from bone, every bite pulling him closer to doom. Thomas Whitmore, refined and arrogant, savors roasted vegetables, his palate blind to the hemlock beneath rosemary and thyme. Benjamin Whitmore, ever the connoisseur, swirls his goblet with practiced grace, inhaling bouquet notes of mulled spice while swallowing nightshade's kiss. The transformation begins subtly, almost unnoticed. Sweat beads on flushed brows despite the December chill. Fingers tremble, goblets slip from nerveless hands, wine staining the tablecloth like spilled blood. Laughter falters, replaced by nervous silence. Then hearts quicken, then stutter, foxglove twisting their rhythm into chaos. Limbs spasm and lock as hemlock takes hold, rigid muscles betraying desperate minds. Vision narrows, dims, collapses into shadow as nightshade closes its merciless grip. One by one, 18 tyrants crumble at their table, their screams piercing the same halls that had echoed with enslaved cries for decades. The chandeliers burn above them like mocking stars, casting light upon faces distorted in horror. Judith stands motionless in the doorway, her expression serene. She does not gloat, does not flinch. She bears silent witness as divine justice consumes the men who once believed themselves untouchable. After 28 years of chains, the reckoning is complete. Dawn breaks cold and pitiless. Frost clings to the earth like shards of glass as the thunder of boots rattles across the plantation grounds. Neighbors, alarmed by the screams that shattered the December night, have summoned the authorities. They find her exactly where she intended, in her kitchen sanctuary, methodically scrubbing the cast iron pot that carried justice to 18 men. Soap and water lift the remnants of her work, but nothing can wash away the quiet fire in her eyes, glowing like coals banked deep within. She offers no resistance when they shackle her scarred hands, no pleas for mercy when dragged through the halls that once rang with cruel laughter. Her steps are measured, her back unbowed. It is not a march to execution, but a procession to coronation. Behind her, the dining room lies silent, save for the flies already circling 18 bodies, cooling on blood-stained linen. Her mission is complete. The rest belongs to history. The trial ignites sensation across the South. Crowds flood the courthouse, traveling from Virginia to Georgia to glimpse the slave who toppled an empire of cruelty with nothing more than kitchen herbs and unbreakable resolve. Newspapers print lurid headlines, painting her as both monster and martyr. Each retelling spreads like wildfire through quarters and kitchens, whispered from one servant to another. The story of Judith, who poisoned her masters. The prosecution demands her death with theatrical outrage, thundering about law and order. The defense barely stirs, knowing no jury of white men will spare a black woman who felled 18 of their own. Sentence is swift, death by hanging on a frigid January morning. But Judith has already won. Her true verdict is written not on parchment but in memory. Her name becomes whispered gospel in the dark, proof that even the most broken possess power when pushed beyond the limits of endurance. Plantation owners across the South lie awake in uneasy sleep, haunted by the thought of every pot, every loaf of bread, every humble pair of hands that might carry her spirit forward. And her courage spreads like contagion. Small rebellions spark in kitchens and fields, pots shattered in defiance, overseers poisoned in the night, chains slipped from wrists by those who no longer fear. Judith has planted something more enduring than terror, hope sharpened into a blade. On the night before her execution, the cast iron pot vanishes from the courthouse evidence room. No one dares to speak of it openly, but rumors abound. Some say fellow slaves smuggled it away beneath baskets of laundry. Others whisper it was taken by abolitionists, understanding its sacred power. Melted in hidden forges, the iron is reforged into tools, plowshares, pruning hooks, knives. From Virginia to Louisiana, implements of freedom carry fragments of her rebellion, her will scattered into the very soil that once drank her people's blood. The morning of her death arrives gray and bitter. Crowds gather at the gallows, shivering in anticipation. Judith walks to the scaffold with steady steps, head high, every inch a queen cloaked, not in velvet, but in defiance. She does not tremble as the noose is lowered. She looks past the crowd, beyond the horizon, into a future she will never see but has already shaped. The trapdoor falls, the rope tightens, her body swings, but her spirit does not break. Though official history may bury her name beneath silence, the enslaved carry her story like gospel. Judith becomes more than a woman, she becomes a legend, a symbol of reckoning whispered in the dark. Her fire burns forward into the storm of civil war, into the cries of freedom yet to come. The Whitmore dynasty is ash, but Judith endures in every whisper of resistance, in every iron tool forged from chains, in every act of courage born from despair. Her vengeance becomes her legacy,